Well, welcome back, everyone. Another incredible day in markets where we may have a top. Well, it might be a little early to call a top in markets, but we did have a pullback, and that fragility that you've heard me talk you through day over day, where you've heard me show you the compression in the speed lines, the fact that we are still clustering underneath a target 2. And of course, I broke down time frames in videos just like these, where the 4-hour chart showed us some more fragility overall. And we did get this incredible set of earnings from NVIDIA. There's no question about that. And the stock did very, very well. It did not close at its highs. However, we did see an incredible performance, and from the major indices that were already at all-time highs or very near abouts, well, the earnings news drove a bump more so in the overnight session than right after NVIDIA announced yesterday at the close, right after the close. So we got a rise that took the SPY up into the roughly low to mid 530s. However, we ended up in the mid 520s for the SPY. And as you can see over here on the hard right edge of the screen, the S&P E-minis had a negative momentum shift. They have some negative momentum flags. We've got the speed lines crossing over blue versus magenta. And prices come down to an area that's quite normal. We were looking for, if fragility presents, coming down to that first breakout forecaster, and we've effectively done so with spinning distance of actually perforating it, but closing back up above it. When you take a look at the low for the session, 52.73, and of course the high of the session was a 53.68. and a quarter of a point. So incredible range. The market did come down to that breakout forecaster right there, did follow through a little lower, but then rallied back up and closed above. Now, what does this mean? Well, we are in a very clear end of the champion trend pack bullish signal sequence. There's 3 stages. Champion cross and champion trend. That's champion cross with the block at the bottom of the main chart. Champion trend. Wealth signal for stage 2. And breakout forecasters, wherein when we have an absence for 3 days of the breakout forecasters from the last one, and we start to see compression of the speed lines, it starts to get a little bit worrisome for downside risk. And it did end up presenting not before we got up to that high. And of course, that bearish reversal is not something that we want to take lightly, but we know that the NASDAQ has been a market that can lead in this moment in time, as it was NVIDIA's earnings. And of course, this is the last of the big earnings. What did the NASDAQ do? It also had that bearish reversal, closing below its speed lines, but not as advanced as the SPY. So there is a fairly decent chance to suggest that we have another reprieve higher, okay? One that may not go much further than the highs made today on the NASDAQ or the S&P minis. But again, it is more likely to succumb to this fragility that we're seeing overall. And to be quite frank, it is in a market state right now where up against all-time highs with incredible earnings, we weren't able to hold those highs. So profit taking did set in, and that natural occurrence is likely to repeat. Well, what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to bring up on your screen a chart of the SPY against the volume-weighted average price cone for the month of May. And we have VWAP right over here. We've got the weekly pivot lines going horizontally through the screen. The center of the weekly pivot lines that I affectionately call the mattress is that area where below, it's like putting money under the mattress, risk off, saving, conservative. Money comes out from under the mattress, goes above. Well, that's risk on. So we're on the side where fear can emerge, but as we just saw, the NASDAQ is not as advanced in its move as per the ES's move, and it is still large and in charge. We may get that push back up that is less likely to sustain in the market before this long market weekend. Now, NVIDIA did some awesome stuff in markets. We did see that incredible move yesterday. And then, of course, today we saw some follow through further to the upside, and we got highs made in the 1060s for NVDA. Closing, however, in the 1035 area, but in a state where it's still in its uptrend zone. And as a matter of fact, the stats would still support, even though we're very far away from normal and mean reversion should kick in, the pattern does support potentially a head and shoulders, a left shoulder, a head, and a right shoulder being built, where it could be one that is more atypical, where the right shoulder is even higher. Well, we're going to have to watch that one carefully. The key line on NVIDIA at this stage is that pretty much that round number, 1,000, but I would be starting to get a little bit more risk averse in the 1015 area. And of course, in the 980s, 988 to 993 would be another area where I would rather be a little more risk averse. Not to say it can't bounce back up, but a profit-taking pullback can go deeper than one may want to sustain. Let's go from here to bring it all back home to exactly where we started. The S&Ps are that swing barometer. They look like they're in a double top. We've got a negative divergence locked in. But we know that the NASDAQ has shown leadership, in particular over the last handful of days, several days in particular. This does keep the door open for a potential push back up. And then my insight would be very much so, like the S&Ps, succumb to some fragility. I hope that this has been helpful. My expectations are for a market that is, if it makes a high in markets tomorrow or tries to rise back towards the highs, it's less likely to sustain. So selling into strength is the way that I'm operating and looking for some more downside risk to potentially emerge, but more so after the long holiday weekend. Typically on the long holiday weekend, we tend to see prices stick around. And tomorrow is probably more so of a lame duck day, but we've had a big enough market move to get folks on edge right before we end up getting and going on that 3-day long market weekend. Have a wonderful rest of your day, folks. Thank you for watching. I hope that this video has been helpful and provided you with some insight. More insight coming in videos just like these in the days to come. For those leaving on a 4-day holiday weekend early, have a safe and happy holiday weekend. For those that are in markets and active tomorrow, wishing you all the best. And thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Bye for now.